My grandson kicked me out of my own house on a rainy Tuesday night, and the only soul who stayed beside me was my old dog, Max. Jason threw my coat onto the porch, pointed at the driveway, and told me I was no longer welcome. Then he looked down at Max and called him a useless animal. I looked at the boy I had raised since he was 8 years old and said only 3 words, "Apologize to Max." Jason stared at me for a second, then laughed, and that laugh told me everything I needed to know. For 20 years, I had mistaken blood for loyalty. My name is Arthur Bennett, and I built that house with my own hands. Every beam, every rail, every stone border around the garden carried a piece of my life. My wife Margaret planted the hydrangeas beside the front steps. When he had nightmares, I slept in the chair outside his room. When he needed braces, I sold my old truck. When he wanted college, I used part of my retirement savings. When he failed out after 2 years, I told him life allowed second chances. Maybe I gave him too many second chances. Unpaid rent, credit card debt, a failed business idea, and a car loan he could not manage all came back to my table. At first, Jason thanked me, but later he acted as if help was something I owed him. The house changed after Lily Carter arrived. After she moved in, Jason began speaking differently. He complained that the kitchen was outdated and the living room smelled like old wood. She said Max's dog bed made the place look depressing. I tried to ignore it and told myself young people simply wanted things modern. Then one afternoon, I heard Lily say that I was sitting on a fortune. She told Jason that eventually was not good enough and that he needed to get me to sign something now. I stood in the pantry with Max's treats in my hand and felt the first real crack open inside me. That evening, Jason placed a folder on the same table where I had helped him with homework and said it was time to make things easier. I looked at the folder and asked him, easier for whom? Jason said it would be easier for everyone, but everything in his voice told me it would be easier for him. Lily sat beside him with a smile that was too polished to be sincere. They explained that I was getting older, that the stairs were dangerous, and that managing the property was too much. Then Jason suggested I transfer the house into his name. He said I could still live there and that nothing had to change. But every word he spoke made it clear that everything had already changed. I asked one simple question, and Max? Lily said maybe it was time to think about a cleaner environment. Max lifted his head, and I waited for Jason to defend the dog who had slept beside him through childhood fevers. Jason did not defend him. He only looked away. That was the first time I called Samuel Price. Samuel had handled my wife's estate, my daughter's affairs, and the trust one created for Jason when he was still a child. Samuel told me not to sign anything until he reviewed every page. I did not sign, and that made Jason angry. Over the next month, the house became colder. Lily moved furniture without asking and threw away Margaret's old curtains. Jason stopped eating dinner with me. One morning, I found Max's water bowl outside on the porch. Lily said dogs belonged outside, but I put the bowl back in the kitchen. That night, Jason confronted me. He said I was making their future impossible. I looked around the room where I had raised him and asked what future he meant. He told me I did not need the house anymore because I barely used half of it. I told him a home is not measured by how many rooms a man uses. Jason's face hardened and he told me not to start with old man wisdom. Lily stood behind him as if she had been waiting for those words. Then Jason said I was not his father, just an old man who got stuck with him. The pain was so sharp that for a moment I could not speak. Max woke up and stepped between us, the way he always did when someone hurt me. Jason looked down at Max and said the dog was just as useless as I was. That was when I stood, slowly, not because I was weak, but because I refused to let anger carry me. I looked at my grandson and said, "Apologize to Max." Jason blinked as if kindness to a loyal animal was the strangest request in the world. So I said it again, "Apologize to Max." Lily laughed under her breath, and Jason's pride took over. Jason opened the front door and pointed into the rain. He told me to take my dog and get out. For 1 second, I saw the 8-year-old boy he had been. Then I saw the man he had chosen to become. I picked up Max's leash without begging and without tears. Jason threw my coat after me and told me not to come back unless I was ready to sign. Before I left, I turned around and told him he should have apologized. Then Max and I walked into the rain together. Mrs. Clara Moore saw us from across the street and opened her door before I even knocked. She gave Max a towel, gave me hot coffee, and gave us a place by the fire. When Clara asked what happened, I told her my grandson had forgotten whose house he lived in. Then I called Samuel and said it was time. The next morning, Max and I went to Samuel Price's office. Samuel opened the trust documents and began showing me what Jason did not know. Jason did not know the house was never part of a simple inheritance. It was protected inside the Bennett family residence trust. Jason had been allowed to live there only under a conditional occupancy agreement. That agreement required him to provide respectful care toward me and preserve the property. It also required him to avoid coercion of the trust grantor. Then Samuel showed me the animal welfare clause Margaret had insisted on before she died. Margaret once said a man who cannot be kind to a loyal dog will not be kind to an old person either. She was right. Samuel told me Jason's behavior could violate the trust conditions. I asked what would happen if those conditions had been broken. Samuel said Jason's occupancy could be revoked, his future distribution suspended, and the residence could transfer to the Bennett Senior and Animal Care Foundation. 2 days later, Jason received the formal legal notice from Samuel Price. He called me immediately, but I did not answer. Then Lily called. I did not answer her either. Jason finally sent a message saying I should stop being dramatic and come home to talk. I replied with one sentence, apologize to Max. No apology came. Instead, Jason hired a lawyer. 3 weeks later, we met in Samuel's conference room. Jason arrived in a dark suit he had not paid for, and Lily arrived with the same sharp smile. Their lawyer looked confident until Samuel began. Samuel presented the conditional occupancy agreement first. Then he presented the full Bennett family residence trust. After that came the porch camera footage. The room heard Jason tell me to take that useless animal and leave. Then Samuel played Clara's doorbell recording from across the street. Jason's own voice filled the room, telling me not to come back unless I was ready to sign. Samuel explained that the statement could be interpreted as coercion against an elderly trust grantor. Jason looked at me and said he had only been angry. I said nothing, because anger does not erase what a person chooses to do. Samuel announced that Jason's occupancy rights were revoked effective immediately. Lily whispered and asked what that meant. Samuel told them they had 30 days to leave the house. Jason shouted that the house was supposed to be his. I told him it was supposed to be his home if he remembered how to be family. He asked if all of this was over a dog. I told him it was never just about a dog. Within a month, Jason and Lily were gone. 6 months later, the Bennett Senior and Animal Care Foundation opened its first program. We helped older people protect their homes and keep the animals they loved. One spring morning, I sat on the porch with Max's head resting on my shoe and felt peace return to the house. In the end, Max and I stayed exactly where we belonged, home.